Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me and probably see me now. This is the routing area open meeting. We're missing John. I don't know where he went, but I hope he should be here soon. So I'm going to give him a minute or two before we start. Can someone actually reply on the chat or somewhere in case you can hear me? Yep, there we go. Thanks, Jeff. And you can see the slides, right? Cool. Okay, so we got John. I don't know, John, Martin, if you want to turn your camera on so people can see us and we can wave. As I said, this is the voting area open meeting. There's John and there's Martin soon. There we go. Let me see how this works. Okay, so as in all the sessions, here's the NodeWell. The NodeWell is not only about IPR, it's about other things like conduct, and the anti-harassment procedures are in there. So please take a look, especially at the links at the bottom, all the BCPs down there. Here's a couple of other links that you can go take a look at: the routing area wiki, the routing area directorate. We need blue sheets because we have the Meet Echo. Please, if you can, go to the Code EMD and collaborate on the notes. You can just click on the link at the top of the Meet Echo and get there. I pasted the agenda in there, so it's maybe a little bit easy to take notes from that. We're always looking for feedback about how we're doing, what could we do better, what things we may be actually doing well. Please let us know, either directly to any of us, if you want to give us personal feedback, if you want to talk about somewhere else, we can also try and do things like that. The other normal plea that we have is to please review documents in your working group, documents in other working groups. This request comes because the work is not done at the end of the process. The work should be done during the process in the working groups. So let's make sure that all the documents have good quality by the time we get to publication. Here's the agenda for today. It's relatively simple. We only have 1 hour. We're going to go through a very quick area status. Then we're going to have the routing directorate report. And then we're going to have, just like we started last time, having some working group updates. We have asked for about 5 or 6 minutes each to talk about the working group, what they're doing, what may be interesting to other people. And then in the end, if we have some time, we're going to have some open discussion. Does anyone have anything you want to add now to the agenda? Nope. Okay, good. So not much has changed in terms of working groups in the area. We don't have any new working groups. We didn't recharter anything. And of course, we didn't close any working groups either. We do have a couple of new chairs. Don Fedek joined as co-chair of Manet with Ronald, who was acting as the sole chair for at least over a year now. Welcome, Don. And also welcome to Yingsen Ku, who is the new RTGWG chair. She is replacing Chris Bowers, who stepped down not long ago. Thank you, Chris, for all the work that you did in RTGWG. We also have one BOF this time that will happen tomorrow at noon local time in wherever the meeting local time is. This is the APN BOF, Application Aware Networking. please plan to attend. There shouldn't be any other routing conflicts at that time. Just in case you don't know who the responsible AD for your working group is, this is the way we have distributed the working groups. So you can go talk to the AD for any working group you want. Okay, so unless there's any questions now, we're going to go into the routing director report. I'm guessing that Hao-Mian, you're probably going to present this.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Yeah. Can you hear me? Hello?
We can hear you. No problem.
Oh, okay. This is Hao-Mian speaking, and this is okay, my first time to do this kind of report for the routing directorate. Next, please. Well, yeah, this is a kind of update for the review and statistics of the whole team. And currently, the routing directorate is composed by 44 routing area experts, and all of them are quite active in different kind of working groups and appointed by the ADs. And the purpose of this team is to review the drafts from the routing area as they pass through the IETF last call, or we are also having the review of the other routing related drafts for IETF from other areas. And we also provide those kind of early review for any routing area working group document before the working group last call. So the this is always requested by the working group chairs before the working group last call on demand. Next, please. Okay, and here are some kind of statistics for the review. Actually, we show the statistics of of each IETF meeting from 2020, and I think this time we are having around totally 17 documents reviewed, and maybe 8 of them are for early review, and 9 of them are for working group last call review. And this is the data from last IETF since March. And we also give distribution according to the working groups at the right-hand side of this picture. And actually, we have quite good distribution, and we cover a lot of working groups in the routing area. Next, please. Yeah, and this would be a kind of result for the review, because we consider most of them a review completed with ready with issues, and this would be around 39%, and almost 30% of them are ready with nits, and 28% for totally ready without any issues. And there's 3% maybe one document marked as not ready and needs some extra work, and we feedback this to the working group. And regarding the non-routing area drafts, the status is given at the right-hand side, and I think more than 50% marked as ready with issues, while the 20% are marked as ready. Another 20% is labeled as ready with NIT, and there is also one document marked as not ready. Okay, this is basically introduction for the review of the routing directorate, and I assume this is the last slide we have. Okay, thank you, Alvaro. That's it.
Great, thank you. I should have said before at the beginning that Hao-Mian is joining or just joined the group of Routing Directorate coordinators along with Luc and Dre. He is replacing Amy, who stepped down because of changes in her job. So welcome and thank you, Amy, for all the work that you've done. Any questions, comments? I'm not watching the chat actually, by the way. So if anything comes up there, please come to the microphone. Any questions or comments around the Routing Directorate? Okay, so we're going to move on to the working group updates. And first up, we have NVO3. I think Matthew is here. Go ahead, Matthew.
Hi, Alvaro. Can you hear me? Great.
Yep, we can.
Good. So, little summary because we haven't presented for a while. So, what's NVO3 about? So, NVO3 is chartered to develop a set of protocols or protocol extensions for network virtualization in a data center environment with an IP underlay. And it's to provide basically layer 2 and layer 3 services for these virtual networks to enable multi-tenancy and workload mobility. And the working group has a pretty broad brief in this, covering the architecture and the data plane and control plane, security and OEM for all of these sorts of solutions. It has 7 RFCs so far. We, in the early life of the working group, we had a lot of debate on the control plane and should it be centralized, should it be distributed, what should we focus on? The control plane, and so basically the distributed control plane part, basically BGP, was hived off into mostly covered by BES working group now. So in terms of control plane work, we assess the applicability of the distributed control planes, but they're mostly centralized. Next slide, please. So data plane has been a very major part of the work of the group. It's basically choosing and designing an encapsulation for network virtualization. And the group over the last few years has spent a significant amount of time selecting a data plane encapsulation from numerous candidates. So there were candidates who were brought into the working group itself, so Geneve, VXLAN, I should say GPE, not BGP, Freudian slip there, and GU. There were also some kind of pre-standard encapsulations of VXLAN and NVGRE that were deployed in data centers for these kinds of applications as well. This debate was, as I think many working groups have found, is particularly controversial and difficult because it impacts hardware. And it's once something is deployed, an encapsulation is deployed, it's difficult to upgrade or interoperate with existing different deployments. The way we worked through this was to form, actually, I think there were 2 encapsulation design teams over the process of this, and they ended up selecting the Geneve encapsulation. And that was last year published as a standards track RFC 8296. And the process we took was to say, well, there's going to be one standard. The working group needs to be able to pick what it is, but the others can then, once the working group has focused on this one, can go ahead as maybe an informational RFC, and also ones that had broader applicability, like GU, were sent off to the internet area. We've also documented the work of this design team in draft IETF NVO3 encapsulation, which is just going through working group last call in NVO3. We wanted to publish this as an RFC, really to kind of help with documenting our experience of trying to pick a standards track encapsulation, because this is, you know, numerous times is a very challenging thing for working groups to do. Next slide. Thank you. On the control plane side, so distributed control planes are explicitly out of scope of NVO3. The use of BGP with EVPN is being covered by the BESS working group, and there's a draft in BESS for using how you use Geneve with EVPN, and we have an applicability draft in NVO3 to really scope out how you use EVPN in the network virtualization environment. The working group has also done some kind of joint control plane work with the IEEE for split NVE, so split network virtualization edge control plane requirements. So that's published in RFC 8394, and that supported the development of IEEE 802.1 QCY in 2019. We have found that there generally hasn't been a whole lot of contribution or demand for pursuing centralized control plane work in NVO3, although we have some Yang configuration models, which I appreciate is more management model in the NVO3 Yang config draft. And next slide. So there is also some ongoing work on OEM, particularly the use of BFD over Geneve, and a more general draft talking about OEM aspects of the Geneve encapsulation, and we hope to wrap this up during 2021, so hopefully this year. Okay, and that is it for NVO3. Thank you. Any questions? Okay, thanks, Alvaro.
Hi. So I'm Tal Mizrahi. I'm the secretary of SFC. And Jim and Joel apologize. They couldn't make it today because they have a conflict. Next slide, please. So just a very brief introduction of what SFC is. Service function chaining, basically a service function chain is an ordered set of service functions. So these can be, for example, firewalls or load balancers. And like we can see in the figure, a chain of service functions, but it's not necessarily a very nice linear chain. It can actually be a bunch of virtual machines or physical machines, which are in different places. And then when we have a service function path and a packet that is forwarded through this path, it goes through a pretty interesting path, which goes back and forth between these different machines. And that's what makes it interesting in terms of routing. Next slide, please. So this is work that was already completed in the working group. So basically we have 7 published RFCs. 3 of them are related to architecture and use cases. 2 of them are related to NSH, the network service header. And this was the encapsulation that was standardized in the working group for service function chains. So this was published a couple of years ago. There was also an RFC which defined the OEM framework in the context of service function chains. And there is an RFC about context headers. Basically, a context header is a type of metadata that is attached to the network service header. And this metadata can be used by service functions along the path. Next slide, please. Okay, so the current work, we have 5 active working group documents and 12 individual internet drafts. And basically, one document is currently in ISG review, and this is a document that is related to integrity protection. And so right now, there's a lot of discussion about this document between the authors and the ADs, which have reviewed the draft. There are quite a few comments that need to be resolved at this point. So that's ongoing. That's one thing. We have 2 documents which have passed working group last call. One of them is related to the IOAM proof of transit, and the other one is related to NSH TLVs. So these are on their way to the ISG. And we have a couple of more active working group documents. And there's a bunch of documents that haven't been adopted by the working group yet. So here's the tricky part. We haven't been meeting regularly in the last 2 years. And there's quite a bit of traffic in the mailing list by the authors of these drafts. But we found that there is not enough traffic of people who actually review the drafts and discuss the draft over the mailing list. So one thing that we're looking for, if people are interested in SFC, if they care about SFC, it would really help the working group if people read documents and sent us any comments over the mailing list. And if we see that there is some new energy in the mailing list and more discussion of these documents, we'll probably go back to meeting regularly, and we may be able to get some more work done. So that's something that we're looking forward to. Any questions or comments? Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Tal. Okay, so now we are on to Beth.
Thanks, Alvaro. It's Matthew Bocci again, co-chair of Bess. Stefan, my co-chair, unfortunately couldn't make the meeting. So next slide, please. So BESS stands for BGP enabled services. So it's the home for key BGP based services such as L3 VPNs, BGP, VPLS, EVPN, multicast VPNs, and so on. And it kind of grew out of the old L3 VPN and L2 VPN working groups for the BGP based services from those. Because we work with BGP as our control plane, we have a very strong relationship with the IDR working group, and we regularly co-review drafts, and obviously we ask for extensions to BGP, which have to be reviewed by IDR. Next slide. So this is a very active working group. We keep Martin, who is our shepherding AD, very, very busy. So I've just picked out a few of the key sort of hot topics that have been going on in the working group over the last year or two. So one of them is a BIS for RFC 7432. Now, RFC 7432 defines control plane procedures for BGP-based Ethernet VPN. So this has started quite a long time ago. And the update has been, there's been quite a few deployments now for this. So we're updating the RFC based on deployment experience with some clarifications and enhancements to the base RFC. So, I mean, there are basic things like terminology, but there's things to do with route prioritization, designated forwarder roles, BDF, NDF, and so on. So there's been quite a lot of work on that over the last year. Next slide. There is a pretty active draft on BGP-based controller for multicast. And this is about how to use a centralized BGP controller to set up multicast trees. The work started a couple of years ago with a BGP multicast controller draft IETF BES BGP multicast controller that was adopted then. There has also been some other work done, which I think originally started in this draft HB IDR SR P2MP policy started in IDR, which contains some procedures as well for building segment-routed point-to-multipoint trees for sort of point-to-multipoint segment routing policies. But that was mostly discussed in IDR, and we're trying to work out with the authors now how to take these drafts forward and come to a single solution. Next slide, please. A lot of the work in BES is really optimizations to EVPN, Ethernet VPNs. A lot of the work now, obviously with increasing deployments, so people are looking at multi-homing, they're looking at load balancing, improvements to convergence as well for EVPN. So we're very active in improving EVPN based on the deployment experience and new requirements. So in the multi-homing and load balancing areas, there's a couple of notable drafts here. There's EVPN MHPA, which is port-based multi-homing, a bit like multi-chassis lag, but for EVPN. There's the EVPN in equal cost, so it's using a link bandwidth to provide load balancing on access links running at different speeds. In the area of convergence, we have a couple of drafts at least. The fast DF recovery draft, which uses NTP to get faster DF switch over. And there's an IP aliasing draft to aid in this area. We also look at interworking between different BGP-based services. So there's a draft Brisset BES EVPN VPWS seamless, which is really a merged effort to get interworking between EVPN VPWS and legacy BGP VPWS services. And there's a lot of additional ongoing work going on for in EVPN and IPVPNs and or merging EVPN, working with multicast VPNs. And thank you. Any questions? Thanks, Alvaro.
Thank you, Matthew. We're now on to PCE. Go ahead, Drew.
Hello, hi everyone. On behalf of Julian and Hari, let me give you a good update about the PCE working group. Next slide. Quick motivation on why we started working on PCE. The idea was that we would need a central place to do things like path engineering, global optimization, trying to figure out how to compute diverse paths across our network, make sure there is synchronization between the view that is there on the devices and the controller. That all require centralized control, and that's where the PCE comes in. The initial set of reason for PCE were more focused on multi-domain and multi-layer coordination, where no single device would have a global view, so you need something like a PCE to cooperate with each other and help compute paths which are best path across domains and across layers. And once you do multi-domain, again, you need to do path obfuscation at boundaries. That's where path key and things like that came in. So this was a very quick motivation for why PCE was being worked on in IETF. Next slide, please. Let me give a quick update of what PC Working Group does. We are responsible for the protocol, path computation element communication protocol, the protocol that is used between the client called PCC and the server, which is the PCE. PCEP is also used between the PCs in multi-domain and multi-layer cases. So this is well suited for coordination between controllers. PCE became the core component of any SDN system. PCEP, unique thing was PCEP was that it has been used to signal RSVPT, segment routing, PCCC, and now new work coming in from BEER. We hope work would come in from DetNet, SFC. Wherever there is a requirement for controller to play a role, PCE and PCEP protocol has a role to play. Unique thing about PCEP again is that it's not just for packet networks, it's being used for optical, GMPLS, WSON, FlexGrill, all networks which requires path computation and path setup to happen. PCE and PCEP has a role to play. Next slide. Let me cover some of the hot topics these days that are being discussed in the PC Working Group in the last few years. Stateful PCE, which was our enhancement to the basic PCEP that we have, which was stateless. Stateful made us more closer to a central controller. All that work has been standardized quite a while ago, but the new work is there are enhancements that are happening over the stateful protocol, inter-domain stateful PCE, things like state synchronization when there are multiple PCs, new association types between the LSPs at stateful PCE. So stateful PCEs continue to be enhanced with new use cases. Use of PCE in SDN system. We worked on a PCCC architecture in TEAS, and then the PCCC first extension just got published as RFC 9050. And we have further enhancement to PCCC in the working group for segment routing, SRv6, P2MP, native IP, etc. Use of PCE in a SR system is no-brainer. PCE remains as the part which is going to help you compute your SID stack and SRv6 path, etc. So basic SR has already been standardized. The new work is SR policy, handling of binding segment, path segment, bidirectional, etc. The latest work, which is keeping like a big chunk of our agenda this time, was multicast. There was work related to SR P2MP policy being worked in Spring and PIM, and the extension for that in PCEP. A lot of work from BEER. BEER TE makes a lot of sense where PC would be involved, but there are other new proposals as well where PC-based BEER system and multicast system in general. On the list, there was some discussion on even PCEP LS, that use of PC to transport the network information to the controller. So these have been some of the topics that are recently being discussed in the working group. Last slide, next please. So we have to, of course, based on our work, you could see that there is a lot of coordination between working group that is required. TEAS is still the owner of the PCE architecture. So things like PCCC and use of PC in ACTN, and even in future, any network slices related work, that would happen in TEAS, and any PCEP extension will of course happen in PC Working Group, but we need to make sure the requirements and architecture comes from TEAS. With CCAMP, mostly all our optical work, WSON, FlexGrid, good coordination is needed with CCAMP. Spring for SR, MPLS SR, as well as SRv6. A lot of BEER related things that I was just talking about. With IDR, we had one proposal called native IP, which uses PCEP for BGP session establishment. So there is some coordination with IDR is needed on this, which has been done. There is a cross review from Sue recently on this, which is very helpful. And since IDR and PCEP are both being used for SR extension, it's important that we maintain some parity between the two protocols with respect to features. So that's always a thing to look out for with IDR. With PIM, SR P2MP policy, we hope that when DetNet has starts works on controller plane, PC would play some role there. Similarly, for SFC, any control plane work would require some coordination with SFC working group in PC. And with this, I close. Are there any questions? Oh yes, AC. I'm sorry, I kind of missed IGP. So there is work with respect to PC discovery in IGP that is currently happening, and there is a document with respect to security capability extension. So I'm sorry for missing that.
Any other questions? Thank you, Drew. And the last update that we have today is for Lisp. Go ahead, Luigi.
Okay, so I'm Luigi. I'm co-chairing this working group with Joel, which is not here. He has a conflict, as was stated, for us SFC. And we have Padma, our secretary. Maybe he's here in, I don't know. Anyway, slide, please, next. So let me just introduce. Lisp stands for Locator ID Separation Protocol. This working group has been around for something around 10 years. And the early years was about experimental deployments. So later on, we have been rechartered in order to go for standard tracks, so that we have documents that are proposed standard. And in the last couple of years, we worked a lot on what we call the BIS documents that basically define the control plane and the data plane. So the basic specification of Lisp as proposed standard. And don't be scared about the figure. There is the status of our data tracker is just that we are happy because we finally got over some blocking points. Okay, so, and we have the main specs out and a few additional items also. We have a couple of documents that need to be shuffled. The most important, besides the main specs, what we were working on in the last year or so is to secure the control plane. I have to say we kind of underestimate the work to secure the control plane, but at the same time we had a sequence of unfortunate events in the review, let's say. The control plane, which basically has a pool model, basically like DNS, in the sense you query, you obtain the mapping. So basically, the association between identifiers and routing locator. So we added a new feature, which is the publish subscribe. So I can subscribe to specific EIDs so that I can be updated whenever something changes. We were chartered as well on to support multiple protocols. Now, on the control plane side, we have that. We have what we call the LCAF, Lisp Canonical Address Format, which we can associate different address format. So classical IP, but also geo-coordination or anything in a certain way. And we have registries that can be extended. On the data plane part, we still are more on the IP over IP model. Okay, but we also worked on a extensible encapsulation format that allows to go further in the future. Okay, next. Next slide, Alvaro. Thank you. So looking forward, looking at the charter, we have a couple of things that needs to be done. Okay, so and somehow related. One is the NAT traversal, and then is Lisp mobility. So we promised to have a NAT traversal feature because in some use cases, this is what happens, that the end host is behind the NAT, so we need something that allows us to traverse a NAT. And The other thing is Lisp and mobility. So this is one feature that has been discussed, I think, from day one of Lisp. Because if you have a dynamic association between identifiers and locator, obviously is some form of mobility with which you can play with. And so turns out in the implementations that have been shown so far is when you have mobility, a lot of time you are behind the nut. So that is why the two working items are somehow related. I didn't put any draft name of these slides because anyway, you have everything on the Tata tracker, and it's much more easier to remember Lisp mobility than draft blah. And thinking about overlap with possible other working groups, what comes to mind is the DMM, Distributed Mobility Management. We are not yet in contact with them, but I think it is a sensible thing to do is to go there and present what is the Lisp mobility solution, because at least there will be mobility expert in a certain way that can give us feedback, okay, on the specific solution that we are developing. And looking forward, more long term in a certain way, we are in a turning point in the sense that we accept NAT and mobility. We almost completed the charter, okay, but there are interesting applications and use cases that come up, okay. One is, for example, the use of Lisp for multicast, and this is some work that is being developed actually in the PIM working group, and just they keeps us nicely updated. And the role of the Lisp working group would be only if any change in the protocol specs are needed, then we will say something. But other than that, we just try to keep to be informed on what is going on, because we have to say that we also have Lisp also support natively multicast. Okay. Then another couple of interesting things that are starting is what we call the overlay. So thing is the ICAO, which is in International Civil Aviation Organization, is looking to revise their aviation telecommunication network. Okay, so one possibility is to use Lisp. Okay, and there are trials already, but this environment is pretty peculiar in the sense that you have radio regions, okay, that very often are controlled by governments, but for obvious reason and also historical reason. Then you have different communication service provider, which provide IP transport to these radio regions, but then the interconnection of these providers is strictly regulated. It's not a multi-stakeholder model like the internet, I would say, in the sense that there are strict regulation to be followed, okay, because governments are into the picture there. So it turns out that you have different providers that may use different, let's say, Lisp cloud, and then you have something that has to connect all of them, and everybody has to have full control of the local policies, but also a way to transfer some policy information when aircrafts move around. So that is why we call that the overlay in a certain way, is that an overlay that connects several other overlays. So we will soon work on the exact requirements that we received and try to be sure that are clear enough that something can be provided as a solution. Okay. The other thing is Nexagon. This is also something that is related to CoinRG. So Coin is in network computing, so it's like edge computing in a certain way. So the idea is to have a different angle to attack the V2V communication. So vehicle to vehicle. Instead of looking around and having direct contact with the different vehicles, you have a level of indirection that uses Lisp. And basically what you have is that you split the roads in tiles which have an hexagon shape. The reason is there is a what is called a H3 standard in order to be able to build this tile, and then you can group a few hexagons to form a bigger hexagon, and so on. You have a hierarchy. And what happens is that actually vehicles can provide updates on what is the status of these tiles, okay? And what if you or your vehicle is interested in what is going on the tiles, because your plan is to pass over these tiles, what you do subscribe to the specific IDs identifying the tiles, and so that you can get updates on the status. So basically getting updates about traffic jam or problems on the road, anything. So, and this is quite nice work that is taking off in the working group. Next, I think that I'm done with, yes, and if you have any questions, just let me know.
Thank you, Luigi.
Most welcome.
So I hope everyone saved all the questions and comments for the open discussion, which is where we are right now. So anything you want to bring up that pertains to the area, or that you want to ask any of us up here or anyone else? Flames, complaints. Oh, there we go. Shouldn't have said flames. Go ahead, Law.
But the question about IPR again. I heard from one working group early in the week that if you have, or I should say, if we have a working group document and they add a new co-author or contributor, it is now required that that person make an IPR statement that I guess is equivalent to what we require for document at working group adoption. I hadn't heard this before, and are there any instructions, or is it something that will be routing area wide, or what is it?
So
John, did you go ahead?
Yeah, my answer to that is we haven't decided, because I think the first I heard that question was in the last session from you. It kind of makes sense to me to try to harmonize that area wide if we can. And I'm open to discussion at the mic now, but we might want to also have that as one of our topics for the next routing area chairs chats. I mean, it seems like a sensible policy to me, but you know, we haven't yet taken any steps to. And I guess the one other point is, you know, working groups have a lot of different, you know, per working group policies, so I don't see it as being a problem intrinsically for, you know, one working group to say, you know, we're asking for IPR affirmations in this way, and another working group not to say that. That's okay too. And Lou, did you want to address Loa's question? Because if so, maybe we can take you next.
Yeah, I was just going to talk about our experience in Tees. Hopefully my audio is coming through. I know it was bad in one of the earlier meetings.
You're fine.
Okay, great, thanks. So we talked about that in Tees. I don't know if it was 1 or 2 meetings ago. It came about because we had an IPR surprise during a last call. So in Tees, we've been following the practice of IPR at adoption and IPR at last call. But somewhere along the line for a particular document, an author was added. And like a year or year and a half later, we got the surprise about the IPR disclosure. And it just would have been nice when they were added that we knew about it. And that's what caused us to change the policy, that we're now doing it on only working group documents where we've added an author. So that's after the adoption IPR. We're now doing an IPR poll or request to the new authors.
I think this makes sense. The experience I have that I've been active in a number of working groups, and we've been doing IPRs differently, I think, in each working group, and that works fine. So as much as possible, we should let the working group handle this. But according to the guidelines that Lou and John talked about here, I'm saying I don't think we need a strict policy that actually is required across the entire area.
No, but I think it makes sense to offer the template at least.
Sure.
Right, but there was no intention on the part of the ADs so far to require a strict policy. And Alvaro or Martin can jump in if they disagree, but I doubt they will. Should we go on to Luigi's question or comment?
You hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. It's just an observation in a certain way concerning the status update. No, it's not status update. So the presentation about the different working groups. I mean, the email you sent out to ask for this presentation was about also point out possible overlaps with different working groups, which I assume is not just related to routing area, but also in other areas. But unless the working group is really peculiar, in the sense, let's take PCs as an example. He has to deal with different working groups, which is wonderful, the job they are doing. I have the impression that in a certain way, the working groups working in silos, not isolated, but we do our solution, we do our thing, and that's it. So, at least as well, I'm not blaming anybody. It's just wondering what we can do to improve the situation. It's not about just this small presentation. What can anything we can do in order to have to improve the exchange in a certain, the information exchange between the different working groups, because certainly there is some kind of overlap or help that we can have from different working groups. That's my comment.
It's a great comment, hopefully it's not just a comment for the ADs, because I'd be,
No, it's just a general comment, I say.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah. Cross working group communication is pretty difficult, and or it's difficult to figure out how to promote it. So if there's ideas from other people on the floor, please come to the mic. Otherwise, I think we just have a few minutes left in this session, so but this seems like another excellent topic for the chairs chat.
Yes, I was suggesting that. Thank you.
I feel like we have now like 2 topics for chairs chats in the future, which is 2 more than we had when we started. So this meeting has already been a success as far as I'm concerned. Don't see anyone else in the queue right now. Anything else anybody wants to bring up? Otherwise, I think we can close, right?
Yep, we can. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks all. See you again soon.
Thank you. Bye.